and welcome to another episode of FooBar. Today we have a super cool interview with Ali, and she will be talking about server-side rendering websites, talking about a new launch of Amplify that allows you to host those pages with almost no work, and we will get into all the details of what is this feature, SSRR, why it's important for you, how you can get started with it, and how you can get started with it using Amplify. So don't forget to give a like and subscribe to this channel and put all your questions in the comment box below, because I will be sharing them with Ali and I will be answering them. So now let's go to the interview. Hello and welcome to another interview. I have an amazing guest today. I have Ali Spittel. She's the Senior Developer Advocate for AWS Amplify, and I'm super happy to have you here. She's also has a podcast, a blog, a super huge Twitter account, so I'm pretty sure everybody watching knows her. So welcome, Ali. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Your YouTube channel is so amazing, and I'm always learning from it. So I'm really excited to be chatting with you today.
Yes, and you're in the Amplify team that they're launching so many amazing things, and not only Amplify, like the whole mobile. What is the name of the team you're working?
I think it's still technically AWS Mobile, which is funny because front-end developers are a huge part of our audience. And so that's a funny contrast. But yeah, we do a lot. And I think it's really excited to be on this product that is launching so many things and is always having new things to chat about. And as a developer advocate, that makes my job fun because I get to give ideas for products, but also get to chat with people about it.
Yeah, for me, Amplify was so amazing when it launched because I've been a full stack all my life, and I always really like backend development, but I also enjoy the client part. I like to see things. And when I saw that there was this library with all these tools that really integrate into AWS, I was like, yes, why we have not had that before? It just
Yeah, same. I started off as a backend developer as well. I was like Python only for the first couple of years of my career, and then learned front-end development because my company needed it at the time. And so full stack in that I've been both a back-end and front-end developer professionally in my career. But I also enjoy Amplify because you also get the cloud piece of it with these full stack frameworks. You still have to go through the deployment process and figuring all that out and configuring your server, or going through a tutorial of that's broken on how to get this thing up in the cloud. And so that's the thing with Amplify is it's mostly or pretty much all serverless, and you can just kind of push it and it all works. It's very magical. I love it.
That's the part I love. I love magical services that I don't need to do much of the connecting all the pieces. It's just throw libraries and focus on my problem and let the CI/CD thing happen.
Yeah,
CI/CD is not my problem. So today we are going to chat a little bit about a new announcement that Amplify did some weeks or days ago. I don't know. Well, this is coming next week, so let's say weeks. Recording. So what was the announcement?
Yeah, so now Amplify hosting supports Next.js server-side rendering, which is really exciting. So Next.js is this framework that I have been loving over the past couple of years. I think it's so much fun to work with, but we've made it so that all the Amplify libraries work with Next server-side rendering, which is really great. But up until now, the hosting piece of it did not work because it's kind of interesting that you're hosting a static site, but it still needs to do the rendering on the server side. It's a little bit different than normal static site hosting. And so getting that implemented took a little bit, but really excited to have this launched and have the ability to host all types of Next apps now. Everything that Next 9 supports is now supported by
Yeah, I think it's super cool. But for people that doesn't know what SSR is, what Next is, what is the hosting part, maybe we need to break down a little bit
Yeah,
the title of this launch and
for
explain the
sure.
different parts before getting to show it, so everybody is in the same page. Because maybe if you're not a front-end developer, some of these things sounds like Chinese, or maybe if you've been building more traditional applications, this sounds like what the hell.
Yeah.
So,
For sure. So first, let's talk about Next.js and what that is. So Next.js is a React meta framework, which means it's a framework built on top of a framework, which I think is kind of wild, but really cool. And it adds additional functionality into React. So something that we've had to do in React is adding single page routing. So React Router has been dominant in the ecosystem, which is really, really awesome. That being said, over the last couple of years, more and more frameworks like Gatsby have been adding routing in where you can create a file and then a route is created based off of that file name, which makes it so that you don't even have to really worry about routing. You just create a file like you would for any React component and you get the route built in for you. And so Next.js has support for that. It has support for dynamic routing too. So instead of just having to have hard-coded routes for, an about page or something like
yeah.
that, you can also have variables in there.
How many times you write those components, you forget to add the route, you deploy your page, it's like, where is my page? Where is my oh, yeah, I need to go and add the route.
Yeah, for sure. I forgot to configure that part. But the other really awesome thing is that it has both server-side rendering and static site generation. So let's break down both of those terms.
Yes.
So static site generation is a process that's been around for a while where you have some sort of template and then you have some sort of content and you plug the content into that template over and over again. So, for example, if you have a blog post, there are certain things that you want each blog post to have. So you want a header at the top of the page, you want a footer at the bottom of the page, maybe you want to have some sort of sidebar or something along those lines. So if you were writing an HTML site, you would have to copy and paste that HTML from page to page to page, and that becomes pretty annoying. And if you need to change anything in that header, that becomes a problem. And so that's how React kind of came into play, where you can have these reusable components and all of that. But it can be a little bit overkill for something like that. And so these static site generators make it so that you can have 8 different blog posts that all fit into this one template. You write a build script, and the build script plugs your content into that template. And so all of your 8 blog posts have the same format to them, but they have the things that make them unique, which is really great. So some examples of static site generators that people may have heard of would be Jekyll. Gatsby is another one that's been really big in the ecosystem in the last couple years. So those are some examples of static site generators. So Next.js supports that. And again, this happens at build time. So you have to rebuild the site when anything changes, which is great for a lot of types of sites, like a blog.
Yeah.
It's fine if you have to rebuild a blog every single time you have a new post. That makes sense. You can even add things like webhooks to make it so that it redeploys automatically. But some sites you want to have the page build on load time or on request time instead of on build time. So instead of having to rebuild the site every time something changes, you can do that when the request happens. And this is better for maybe e-commerce site where, exactly, where things are changing more dynamically, or if you have some sort of site with comments and you want those to load in. Anything that has content that's updating a little bit more frequently, you'd probably want to use server-side rendering instead. And so server-side rendering follows this same sort of idea where you have a template and you fill content into it, but this happens at request time instead of build time. So you have a new piece of data in your database, you can create a route that dynamically goes to this new database item, and every time somebody requests it, it rebuilds that page. So the really nice thing about Next.js is it makes it so that you can generate HTML for your end user instead of React. So React gives us amazing developer experience where we can reuse these components, and it's really handy on our end. It makes it so that we can scale applications a little bit more. But there's a downside for our end users. We're loading in a JavaScript package that builds a page that can take a little bit of time in order to do that and to render that rather than an HTML page. Like I always say with students that the browser's incredible at reading or parsing HTML. It's really good at parsing CSS. JavaScript is the thing that it's the least good at. And it is still really good at parsing JavaScript, but if we can do as little JavaScript as possible for that end user, that's usually a benefit for them.
And I think it's great for mobile or low-end devices, because then you don't have the power that you might have in your shiny new Mac computer with all the power and all the internet connection. But if you are in like a mobile device with like crappy internet and you need to download all this package of JavaScript and then build your app, and then you're like waiting there for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 60 seconds, and nothing happens, it's like a very bad experience.
Yeah, for sure. And there are some benefits for the end user with React, that they have the more smooth experience, that things are a little bit more dynamic for them. But if we can give them HTML first, then we have that benefit of faster load time. And also for search engine optimization, I know that people are saying that now, like Google is fine with React generated pages, but who knows? You know, there's still that part of me that's like, it probably still parses HTML better. So those are some of the benefits of Next.js, is it gives you both server-side rendering or static site generation. You can choose between the two. You can even do a hybrid of both, which is kind of cool. It also has really great developer experience. So I think the error messages are really slick. It also has fast hot reloading.
Is it a big jump from a React developer to go into Next, or is it pretty straightforward?
No, I think it's super straightforward. And if you want to just use the routing and still use an use effect to fetch your data and use state to update it, like you can still do that if you want. But if you want to use that static site generation and server-side rendering, you can, and have that benefit for your end users as well.
That's super nice. So now we have at least the main two things in the topic. We have the server-side rendering, we have the Next.js, and now we are missing a little bit the Amplify part. You mentioned that there was this hosting, and then there was this library support that was announced some time ago. Maybe you can break down what it means, the two different launches.
For sure. So Amplify libraries allows you to tie your Amplify resources into your front end. So, for example, you have data configured through Amplify. Now you want to somehow pull that data into your front end and display it for your end user. Amplify libraries allow you to do that in a pretty straightforward way using these JavaScript and React components or Vue components or whatever you're using as your front end. It works for native as well. So those libraries have been working with server-side rendering since, I believe, the fall. I think it launched right after I started at Amplify. So it's been around for quite a bit. But the last piece of the puzzle was static site hosting, or a server-side rendering for the hosting. So the static site generation for Next.js has worked on Amplify hosting all along. And Amplify hosting is a way to deploy your front-end applications. It has things like pull request previews. It has multi-branch deployments. It has CI/CD. It has, you can like even make it so that it needs to run your automated tests suite before deploying your site. It has all these bells and whistles. And so the thing that launched is making it so that Amplify hosting can host server-side rendered Next.js apps in addition to the static site generated ones.
And where is the server? Where is the server that is rendering that page?
That's the secret with like serverless and all of this, that there is a server behind the scenes. So it is a Lambda at Edge function that is generated and provisioned.
And that's done all automatically for us. We just put our application and it creates the Lambda on Edge, and that will be doing that.
Yeah. It's so smooth as a developer. When I got early access to this feature a couple months ago, I got this email about it and I was like, okay, like what are the instructions? Like, how do I actually do this? And they were like, oh, there's no instructions. You just deploy your app and it'll work for you. I was like, what? Like, I don't buy it. No, that's all that you need to do is you have a Next.js app with server-side rendering built in. You push it to GitHub, you connect that GitHub repository, and it just works. It's like very magical.
Wow, that's super cool. And is it the price changing now if you have this kind of feature enabled?
Yeah, so like anything with Amplify, you're getting charged for the underlying services instead of Amplify itself. Amplify hosting, I guess that looks a little bit different because it is a little bit more of its own service than Amplify's command line interface.
Yeah.
That being said, you are charged for the Lambda Edge function and the CloudFront like you would be with normal Amplify hosting. And I think there's a page about this as well.
Yeah, there's always pricing for all the services, so I will put them in the box down there so everybody can go and check it out. But that's pretty amazing that it's just uploading.
Yeah. I was shocked by it too. I was like, do I have to do anything more? Like, is this actually working? It was.
Wow. Do you want to show it?
Yeah. So I have this super simple Next.js app built out, and I'll show it to you. I have a full tutorial on how to create this too. So if you go to my YouTube channel or my blog, which is We Learn Code, and you go to a complete beginner's guide to Next.js, there's a full tutorial on building this if you're interested in that.
But link in the description box, so don't worry. I would share it.
Perfect. But we'll do a quick walkthrough anyways if you're here already. So essentially what this is it's just a site that if I click on any of these colors, it goes to the page for that color and renders the color in the background. I did a bunch of the Pantone colors of the year, which I think is fun. I like color. So to talk a little bit about Next.js and what's going on here, we talked about how the routing just works. So first, the index.js is the homepage, and I'm just looping through all my different colors and rendering them. And it works. There's a link component as well, which behind the scenes creates an A tag for you, but it gives you the nice slick transition that you get from single page routing. So that's where that's coming in. And then I have this second color JS, which you can see is in square brackets.
Wow.
And that makes it so that it's a dynamic route. So you can see right here that I have ultraviolet in this URL, and that makes it so that it renders a page for that violet color.
So you don't have a page for each of the colors?
Yeah, no pages for each color. It infers it. So it uses it as a parameter if it's in those square brackets. The really nice thing is you can also create folders and then files in there. So if you want nested routes, so if you wanted it to be /color and then the actual name of the color, you would make a color directory within pages and then create this color file within there. And then you have like a nested route, which I think is
that's pretty awesome.
Pretty neat. Yeah. So now you can see that I went to the Marsala page and that worked as well. So right now, this is a static site generated Next.js app. And so the static site generation, again, happens at build time instead of at request time. So this one, I have a bunch of colors in a JSON file. It's like data colors.json. So I'm just iterating through these within this get static paths here. And I'm creating a path for each one of those colors. And this fallback false is going to make it so that you get a 404 page if you go to a color that does not exist.
That's easy.
Yeah. It's really nice. You just have to fit this format for the object that they want. But other than that, that's all you need. And then the second function here, this get static props, this makes it so that each one of these color pages is provided with the correct props for them. So you get the params from the URL, so the color name, Marsala. And then once I do that, I'm looping through my color object and finding the color name that matches the color from the parameters and then matches that up and then passes it as a prop to the component itself. And so then I have this color variable that I can access within that color right there.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And so to deploy a static site generated Next.js app, what you need to do is within your package JSON, just convert it to next build and next export. And I could push this to GitHub and deploy it to Amplify hosting, and it would work just like that. So the static site generated one is the one that you actually have to add extra to. If I go back to next build, then it will deploy it as a server-side rendered app. I will need to change a little bit in my Next.js code to make it server-side rendered as well. So should we go ahead and do that?
Yes.
Awesome.
And then now people know both of the sides, how to do it.
Yeah. For sure. So I think
this is my first time seeing Next. I have it in my list of things to try out, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
It's super cool. It's super straightforward too. I think it took me 10 minutes on top of React, because I've been using React since 2015, I believe. So on top of React, it's really a very, very low lift, especially if you just want to use the routing. And I've done that before in apps too. So I just create this pages directory and create pages within it. And instead of doing get static props or get static paths or anything like that, I'll just create a use effect within there and fetch my data like that. And then you just have kind of a normal React app, which you get the routing for free. So even if you don't want to dive too deep in Next.js, you can still get some benefits from it. So what I want to do is we're going to refactor this to be a server-side rendered app. And what we'll get from that is we'll make it so that our app can take any color instead of just the colors that we're passing in the object. So what I'm going to do is I will comment out the get static paths, because we no longer need to create those static paths up front. Instead, they'll be done on request time instead of at build time. Then we need to rename this function to get server-side props. And then the function works the same way. That being said, we probably don't want to match up the color to our color object this time. So instead, what we'll do is we'll use the named CSS colors. And so we could pass in Rebecca Purple, for example, as the name of the page. And so we will just do params.color right here, and we'll, it'll be
easier, but
yeah. So we'll do red color equals params.color, and then we'll pass color in here. And then instead of doing color.hex, we'll also just do color right there and then color here. And so now this will make it so that we can go to any colors page, and at request time, it will create that page for me. So let's try this out.
Like this? Nothing else?
Nothing else.
Wow.
So now Marsala, Rebecca Purple. There we go.
That's super cool. So basically just that get server-side props is the magic method.
Yeah, exactly. That's all we need to do is instead of doing get static props, we'll do get server-side props instead. And that will make it so that it runs at build time instead, or at request time instead of build time.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So let's deploy this. So now I have this SSR branch that has my static site rendered version instead of my static site generated version. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Amplify console. So I'll go to the AWS console first, sign in, and then I'm going to go to AWS Amplify within the AWS console. And you can see how many Amplify apps I always have running. And it's across different regions too. It's like every region is.
I know. I have the same. Should clean it one day.
Yeah.
Or no. Or create a new AWS account.
I've been getting better about running Amplify delete in a lot of folders pretty frequently. So Amplify delete is how you clean up an Amplify directory for the people watching, and that deprovisions all of the cloud resources and all that. So I've tried to get in the habit of doing that, but it's hard to remember.
Yeah. So there is your repo.
Yeah, so there's my repository. I connected to GitHub. There was also other providers as well, but I use GitHub. I think a lot of other people do too.
Exactly.
I'm going to choose my SSR branch. Click Next. And it inferred all of these build settings for me. And npm run build is exactly what I want to deploy. Okay. So this is it.
That's all?
Yeah.
So no need to change the build settings or anything? It just
no need to change the build settings. It figures them out for you. Save and deploy.
That's so cool. So this is the magic of Amplify.
Yeah, for sure. And now we get to wait some minutes for it to deploy, but this is pretty much it.
That's super cool, because now basically you wrote like 3 lines of code, you put it in GitHub, and you have a full endless work inside, because you have all the colors in the spectrum of CSS.
Yeah, all the named colors. I always like looking through there and seeing all the different named ones, because it's funny.
It is.
How many there really are.
But this is so cool. I didn't imagine this would be so easy.
Yeah, me neither. Again, I emailed the engineers back when they gave me access. I was like, hey, how do I actually do this? What are the instructions?
Yeah. So then if you add, for example, authentication or any of the libraries to this application, then it will still work, the SSR.
Yeah. So if you use them within a use effect or within your component, they'll work like normal. But if you use them in that get server-side props function, then you would want to use the SSR support for the Amplify libraries. And so that just looks a little bit different than what it normally does. So I think it's like SSR.API instead of API, for example.
Okay.
So, and then there's one other setting that you need to turn on in your Amplify config as well, or not your Amplify. Yeah, in your Amplify config, when you call that function, you'll have to change that a little bit, but otherwise it works the same.
Okay, so maybe after this finish deploying and you show it to us, we can go and look at the documentation and show people where they can find the information on how to use these libraries.
Yeah, we can do that. Agreed. So we actually have it in the sidebar of the documentation in the switcher. So you can go to Next.js and then set up full stack project, connect to API. So they did Amplify add API as the example in the docs. And let's see, here's the library. So in your Amplify configure, you do the AWS
and you
exports
make
like
it a
normal.
tiny bit bigger.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry about that.
I'm very blind, sorry.
No, you're good. So we just want to set SSR to true within the Amplify configure. So it's a tiny bit different than normal where you just do the AWS exports. And then with here, in the get server-side props, you would do SSR equals the with server-side context with the request. And this function will return the object, and then you do ssr.api.graphql or api.get or api.put or whatever. That works the same as it normally would. You just have to do it with SSR as the prefix.
So basically, if we do this, then it will be getting, I don't know, this is a query from GraphQL. In the server side, it will put it in our HTML, and then it will send the HTML to us.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll do the GraphQL request on the server instead of on the client.
Yeah, will this be faster for the client if we do these queries in the server side?
Most likely, yes. Most likely, it's going to be faster if it runs on the server than in the browser in the client.
Yeah, I imagine, because now it doesn't need to go all the way back to my device. It's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
this
for
is so
sure.
cool. Even though GraphQL already is like returning only what I need, but still, it's just
Yeah, and then you can see this React component that's created. They're using the API.GraphQL in here as well in order to make the request to create a new post. So you can still do that like normal. Since this is in your normal React
yeah,
component, you just use API.GraphQL instead of SSR.API.GraphQL. You only need to do the SSR if you're doing it within the Get server-side props.
exactly. And usually that applies to, in the case of GraphQL, I imagine, for queries, because mutations and subscriptions, I don't know where they will fall in this, because that's I don't know. That's a philosophical question.
Yeah, I think it would have to still go within the
Yeah,
React component, and you'd probably put it in a use effect still.
exactly. Because I think this is really good for queries, but mutations and
Yeah,
subscriptions are out of this. But still, queries are heavy.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Wow, this
And
is so
right
simple.
now, the GraphQL API, so APIs are supported.
API
Data
gateway as
store,
well.
that's a good question. I believe so. I think the whole API object works.
Okay.
And then data store works. And then authentication works on the server side.
Wow. With data store is pretty crazy, because it's offline, like rendering the server, like you're it's using all the cool and shiny like buzzwords your
Yeah, yeah,
app. And you get it with like almost nothing of work.
Okay, cool. We built successfully. Now we're
Yay!
deploying.
And then it will be ready in a while. But this is pretty cool. So if you're interested, for everybody watching, I will leave the link of this in the description box, because I think it's worth the time to read the documentation and check the examples, because it's pretty amazing, the power of this feature. How simple it is. I didn't imagine that it would be so simple.
Yeah, it's almost not worth the demo because it's just the same as hosting any.
Yeah, it's worth the demo, so people
Yeah,
know how simple is this thing, because sometimes, at least when things are announced, I put them in the things, like I need to check this thing out, and then I leave it there. I think so many of us, we do that all the time, like, oh, new announcement, let's save it, and I will look at it later. And this has been there, I think, since the library announcement. I have put it in the thing. Oh, I need to learn Next, and in order to do this, and I need to do the it will come. And now in like half an hour, you show it to me, the whole full thing, and I was like, learn Next. I learned how to do the hosting, and I now know how to do the API thing. I can go and do it.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And we're now deployed. So it's
Good.
doing the rendering on the server.
Ooh.
So I can go to Rebecca Purple. There we go.
Yes. This is so pretty and so cool that there is nothing. There is like one color.
Yeah.
So this is great for blogs and e-commerce and anything that you have these dynamic pages. I think sometimes developer advocates, we tend to do the most simple tutorials, and
For
it's
sure.
like, it's just use your imagination, put your use case. After you have this, then you can build a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. Like normally, instead of just rendering a color, you would fetch your data or something along those lines, and you very much
Yeah,
can do that within the Get server side props. You can make your
exactly.
API request and
Yeah,
dynamically generate your page off of that.
exactly. So this is super cool, Ali. So thank you very much for sharing this. I'm very excited now of trying it.
Yeah, for sure. I used Create React App for years to generate every React app, and I still adore it. I love Create React App as a tool, but now I usually just go straight for Next
Is there
because
a Create Next app?
yeah, exactly. NPX Create Next App, just like Create React App, and I get a little bit more. So I really enjoy it.
I should do my next demos with it. Now I'm building Amplify with CDK, so that's my last way of doing Amplify. So I can add more complexity to it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, but
And
it's so cool.
there are other similar frameworks as well. So there is Next, which is the Vue version of Next.js. We do not support it yet, but I have heard a lot of customer requests. So something tells me it's in the pipelines.
Good. So that's maybe coming.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, that's super cool. But I think this will help a lot of people doing web development because it's so simple that basically if you're already using Next, then it's very easy to, well, you might already have it in your Amplify app and you might not be aware of it. If it's that simple. But yeah. So Ali, this was super cool. I think this was the most productive 30 minutes of my life today.
Awesome.
I've been doing a lot of reporting, not very productive. So I'm happy that I sit with you today and I learn about these things. It's so cool. So all the links, and you said that this is a GitHub repo already, so I will put it also in the description box so people can go and see these 3 lines of code that you wrote. But it's so powerful, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is really fun.
Where people can find you in general? Where are you hanging out? Everywhere.
Yeah, I'm on the internet. I hang out sometimes. I'm A Spittel pretty much everywhere. On YouTube, I'm Ali Spittel Dev. A Spittel was taken somehow, so that's the only place that I'm different. My blog is We Learn Code, and I post usually once a week-ish on there.
Yeah, I really enjoy what you're doing lately on Twitter Spaces, this chatting and talking with different people and open the mic for a lot of people. So when is that something happening regular, like the Twitter Spaces?
Yeah, well, thanks. So we do them every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And I really enjoy it because I get to learn a lot from different people.
I like it.
And we talk about different things. Usually it's something cloud related, but not always. Sometimes it's more like professional development. We're calling them Full Stack Fridays. I just really like learning from other people, and I like inviting different developer advocates to talk about what they're working on. I had the containers folks on last week to talk about App Runner, and that is so cool. I'm so excited about that new service.
Yeah. One more way to run containers.
Yeah. But you don't need to like write the container yourself. You can just deploy the thing. It's so cool.
But I found that the Amplify supported the container thing, like I think after reInvent or during reInvent, and that was like, this is the easiest way to run containers besides Lightsail and all those very basic things.
Sure.
But I need to try App Runner now and see if it's easier than Amplify.
So Amplify has Fargate support for containers, which is really great. And it writes the container for you. You don't need to really write it yourself, which is really awesome. So that's a great experience, but it's through the command line.
Yeah.
I think App Runner is, I almost say it's the Amplify hosting for containers. So you can deploy your backend kind of similar to how you deploy your front end through Amplify hosting. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I will need to check it out because I like those tools that makes life easier. And sometimes when I go to ECS, I just don't know where to go. It's just like, I'm not a container person. I'm very confused. So I'm always in the look for new simple tools. But those Twitter Spaces, I recommend them to everybody. I really enjoy it. It's a very low effort for you, the audience, because you just put it on and you can have it as radio.
Yeah. It's almost like a podcast, but
exactly, but with questions on live. So I really enjoy it. But thank you, Ali, for your time. This was nice, super quick and to the spot. So
thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for watching the whole interview. If you have any questions for Ali or for me, drop them in the comment box below. You can reach Ali directly from Twitter and her contact detail is on the description box. I see you in the next episode of FooBar. Ciao, ciao!